I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 regular City Council meeting of the East Lansing City Council. At the opening, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Altman.
Here.
Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Councilmember Watson. Mayor Pro Tem Singh. Here. Mayor Brookover.
Here. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Moved by Meadows, seconded by?
Second.
By Dr. Altman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The agenda is passed as depicted. Item 1.3, approval of the minutes. We have before us regular council meeting minutes of January 7th, 2025, as well as city council discussion only minutes of January 14th, 2025. Do we have any motions with regard to those?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the regular council meeting of 7 January 2025 and the city council discussion only meeting minutes from 14 January 2025.
Meadows moves to approve both of the sets of minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Singh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. My understanding is item number 2 has been deferred as Representative Tsernoglou is not available tonight. That then moves us to item 3, communications. Item 3.1, all written communications received by council are posted on the online agenda packet. Item 3.2, communications from the audience. I have 2 sheets. Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. I'm Deborah Stewart, a 65-year resident and property owner at Grove Street and the 600 block. I wish to speak with you this evening about rezoning of the 700 block of Grove, which can cause past, current, and future damages to College Grove historic homes. I did want to begin by thanking each of the council members for your time and your dedication, voluntarily giving to make the community a better place. I did want to briefly acknowledge our father was Roger Stewart. Some of you knew him. He served on the Zoning Board of Appeals and was very dedicated to the community, as I know each of you are. I did want to mention that during his time, to my knowledge, we never had an occurrence where rezoning caused property damage to existing residential areas or commercial areas. He acted as the tax appeals consultant for both residences, businesses, and places like the rental company, which is before us tonight. I did want to point out that 6 of my neighbors residing in the 600 block of Grove and Ridge Road attended the January 7th meeting regarding the rezoning request. 8 of our neighbors wrote letters expressing damages to their residences from previous 700 block of Grove Street rezoning, which involved building approvals and concerns for the inability for Grove Street stormwater drains and resources to handle current and present situations, let alone more building and impervious surfaces from the rezoning and proposed project. I did want to point out our neighbor, Professor Tim Mrzowski's letter, point 3, for our consideration at this time before voting. The suggested site plan does not realistically address stormwater detention or retention. Ultimately, stormwater from Grove, Bircham, and Abbott all flow to the intersection of Abbott and Bircham. That drain appears already to be inadequate for the types of storms we're experiencing. When that intersection backs up, the Grove 600 block does not drain. Without a proper stormwater detention system that keeps all post-development flow less than or equal to the pre-development flow, this project should not be approved. Please require a proper stormwater design prior to making changes in rezoning for properties. As I mentioned, to my knowledge, our council and the Zoning Board of Appeals had never considered rezoning, which affected the property and damages to existing residential areas or building areas which are also business located. From communications with rental property owners, neighbors have pointed out that there are many other sites for the apartment complex which are more suitable. Gunson Street, Albert, Ann, Abbott, Chandler, and over 200 houses owned by the applicant rental company. No response has been acknowledged by the rental company except their needs to make profits. Other locations are available to both the rental company and to supportive East Lansing council members, which would not knowingly cause further damage to East Lansing residences, specifically historic homes on the 600 block of Grove. It is our hope that, being the Stewart family, that our collective concerns from the College Grove historic neighborhood are heard, considered, and will be acknowledged by all East Lansing City Council members, who will encourage either alternate locations for the project and thus deny rezoning.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Which would increase density, cause further damages to surrounding East Lansing residential properties, particularly historic homes. Thank you for your time and consideration,
Thank you for
and also your dedication.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Rose?
Patrick Rose, 310 Oxford Road, and I do want to also thank you for all the time you put in on our behalf. I'm speaking since you have on the agenda an item for a closed session to discuss an attorney memorandum. The item lists no subject matter of that memorandum or subjects of the closed session discussion. So we do not know if you are discussing the recently passed city charter amendment or ideas about filing of a lawsuit regarding it. The Charter Amendment Committee's legal team sent a letter signed by just a few of its members, including former Judge James R. Giddings, Mark Grebner, Attorney Alan Clarkson, myself, and Treasurer Mike French. It explains why the amendment follows state law and is within the voters' power to pass by a citizen-initiated petition. I want to touch on two main points from that letter and three additional points. First, the Amendment Committee legal team letter states the filing of a lawsuit to invalidate the voter-passed city charter amendment would be an unconstitutional act. East Lansing is a home rule city. Voters have a right to self-govern by passing rules to allow them to live in their home with a person of their choice who are not tenants and pay no rent. There is no legal basis, as we set forth in painstaking detail, for the city to sue itself in seeking to have a court invalidate the amendment, especially when it lacks standing or any actual controversy, violating its duty to uphold the amendment and enforce it. Second, there is no need for guidance from a court. The committee received today the city's reply to a FOIA request sent by Mark Grebner seeking communications among city staff on implementing the charter amendment. The only communications between city staff at this point on that subject came in response to emails from members of our Charter Amendment Committee. Third, there's no case or controversy, no illegal renters we can't find. Annette Irwin's staff did not ask in a single piece of paper or a single email how to enforce the law based on actual complaints. The city instead issued a citation for failure to obtain a rental license after passage of the amendment. Fourth, the city can and is updating its ordinances. Now, on that point, to address something from last week, the amendment requires no change in the definition of family. As our lawyers committee letter states, the city has a family exception to rental housing license rules. This exception limits which family members can pay into the costs of home ownership as part of living together as a family unit. The amendment does not require adding the family definition any additional persons. At the last meeting, Councilmember Meadows said the amendment did require adding cousins, foster children, and wards of a legal guardian. That's false. He attributed to me that I said to the Housing Commission it was required. I never said that. He misspoke. Fourth, and the context was we were offering policy ideas for a substitute ordinance on the assumption that the amendment would be defeated. My letters are clear. All the members of our committee made that absolutely clear, and it's all a matter of record. Fourth, the city should hire an additional rental housing inspector to vigorously enforce rental housing laws. The city was short-staffed a long time. It lacks enforcement personnel it needs. Why waste money on a lawsuit? Hire inspectors. Fifth, the city can adopt a short-term rental law. Many in this community have urged the council to pass a short-term rental ordinance we very much need. I urged the council to do so 16 months ago. And those voting yes on Prop 1 and no on Prop 1 urged you to pass a short-term rental ordinance. Until you do that, we can't fix the non-enforcement of the rental laws. Detroit has done that, Ann Arbor has done that, Grand Rapids, Lansing. So where are we? We have a manufactured or imagined political crisis. District court actions to enforce fines on illegal renters will give legal clarification.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Taxpayers will save hundreds of thousands of dollars payable to Mr. Chubb's law firm by not filing suit, a frivolous challenge to invalidate the amendment, and instead put him to work enforcing the law. The city attorney can enforce rental license rules without presuming all guests are tenants, as other cities do and have done for decades across Michigan. Thank you for your time.
Sir.
Hi there. I'll fill out a card after. Brian Hagan with Hagan Realty, 927 East Grand River. Here to speak on behalf of the rezoning. We'll also be here, I guess, when you discuss it. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer. As you guys are all familiar, we've submitted a lot, would be an understatement, of comments, maps, tables, things like that throughout this process. Not going to go over all that tonight, of course. Just to have the 5 minutes, I wouldn't do that to you. But just want to touch on a few points that we've made previously, just some clarification there. So the decision that you guys have tonight is that of a rezoning specifically. So did we provide enough evidence, I guess is the question, enough compelling evidence for a conditional rezoning to RM32? I believe we did. The block that's in question is comprised of about 75% of RM32 and B1 already. The remaining 25% is comprised of rental houses and other buildings that are licensed for 5, 7, 8, and of course the fraternity that is licensed for 14. If you widen the scope just slightly, the argument for RM32 is much more compelling. In the surrounding blocks, you have several more fraternities, sororities, apartment buildings, and of course more licensed rental homes. Most recently, you have the taller, more dense sorority across the street. I believe it's 710 Grove. That building in particular, like I said, was the most recently developed site directly across the street, and was supported by some of the people that have actually spoken against us, actually supported it publicly, as well as members on the council currently. Number two, the rezoning and subsequent project we are proposing is in line with the comp plan. I say we because I was on the comp plan committee, when we crafted that plan, we used what was currently built, the surrounding zoning, as well as the future needs for the area. R4, as you know, was determined to be the best fit for the immediate area and the surrounding area, I guess. As you can see, if you look at those maps in the material, it's a lot of orange. That's the R4 zone. If you look at the current zoning map, if you did an overlay essentially, within that zone, within that R4, it is almost exclusively RM32. So what we're asking, I guess, ultimately is that you go with the plan. The comp plan has laid it out. The zoning is appropriate. And then number 3, I added this late because I guess I thought we covered this before, but I felt like it was necessary to go over it again. Whether or not there's a need, I guess, and then to further that point, who is best suited to determine if there's a need. Certainly the market determines that, but people like us determine that, and as many of you know, we've spent a lifetime as property managers, builders, brokers, and community members, I guess, in East Lansing. And I don't think there's many businesses or people, for that matter, that live in this city that would be better suited to determine if there was a need. On top of that, I guess we're also willing to invest millions of dollars in this site. So I think we have the experience, and we're certainly willing to put our money where our mouth is, for lack of a better term, to prove that there's a need. Whether you're a student, a young professional, or a small family, I think you're all looking for, quality, affordable housing near the downtown, near the schools, public amenities, etc. This project does provide that. Lastly, I just want to highlight the fact that, obviously we've been before most of you guys a couple times here, before Planning Commission several times. I just want to point out that we have taken your guys' advice, members of the community's criticism,
You have 30 seconds
Planning
remaining.
Commission advice, and we have addressed each of those concerns, and will continue to address them as we move to the next phase when speaking of water issues and things like that. Those are not supposed to be considered at this stage. We are mindful of those, as my brother can certainly speak on, and absolutely are going to address those. But I hope that you will take these comments into account when you approve the rezoning aspect of our project.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
input. Anybody else in the audience? State your name for the record, please.
Good evening, Matt Hagan, Hagan Realty, 927 East Grand River. First, I just need to kind of right a wrong that occurred here about a year ago when our project was first being presented. Member on Ridge Street accused the church of selling their property to us and making a lot of money off it, and that was the reason for their support of our project. And that just hasn't sat well with me for a year, and I need to right a wrong. So when we purchased 743 Grove, we approached the church to see if they would be interested in selling their property. They weren't at the time. Literally 2 years passed. They contacted us and said, yeah, we're ready to sell. We're gonna get it appraised. Here's the price. Whether you want to buy it or not, this is gonna be the price. This is our move. We're gonna sell it. We decided to purchase it, pay the price. What probably isn't as well known is what the church did with that money. The church donated half of those proceeds to a minority group in the area.
Yeah, if you're going to speak to your thing tonight, let's speak to your thing tonight. Will you please, man?
I thought this was public comment. I could speak about whatever I wanted.
Oh, go ahead then.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's important to know what the church did. I don't go to that church. I'm not a member of that church, but I think that when somebody speaks down or negatively about a group, when that's not the truth, that should be corrected, and that is an important public comment to make. So I feel it's needed to be said tonight. Next, Councilmember Meadows was actually at the first meeting that I spoke at when I was 18 years old, almost 30 years ago now. So we've been doing this a long time together, and developed a lot of properties in the city as a family. And I think that all of them have turned out well. I don't think any of them are a nuisance and have not created any problems for the city, whether it be their water system or otherwise. So I would hope that our longevity and our reputation would have some part in this decision, and the idea that we are going to develop a project that is not going to create more water problems. That's a step that I have to deal with when we go to the site plan, that you guys will have a vote on when it comes to deciding if we are approved tonight and we move on to the next step. At that point in time is, in my opinion, the appropriate time to discuss and to address those concerns. The code is very clear. You have to go to all the different departments, engineering, public works, the whole nine. Everybody gets a comment on it. There's nothing that's going to sneak by, and we're not going to get away with anything. So that stuff will all be addressed as part of the site plan process. And there is a demand. I know at the last meeting, there was a comment about what happens if Michigan State builds a ton more dorms and there's not a need. Well, East Lansing wants more housing. The last time I checked, there was need for single-family people, if you want. Yeah, sure. Well, you have to have supply. And so right now, there's limited supply. The more housing that you have, this type of housing is in demand. And so more supply, less demand, rents don't go up as much. I mean, it's basic economics. So I think this is something that is a benefit to the city, and I hope that you will consider approving it. Thank you.
Thanks for your input. Okay, anybody else in the audience that wishes to address the council? Anybody in the queue?
There is no one in the queue.
Okay, moving ahead to communications from the mayor and council members. Ms. Singh?
Just a couple brief comments. One, there's been a lot of news this week with the federal presidential inauguration, and also news around social media sites no longer fact-checking content. So this is just a friendly reminder that please check sources and really do your due diligence when you're seeing things online. I think it's critical, as education is fundamental to our functioning democracy, that we stay really, really diligent to that end. Secondly, just, continuing on a lot of national news as well within the state, I think for members in the community that may have any questions in terms of their visa status or other immigration issues, the Michigan Immigrants' Rights Center, they have a website, michiganimmigrant.org, and their phone number is 734-239-6863 for members of the community that may have questions there. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Watson?
No, thank you.
Mr. Meadows?
Nothing much. I do want to announce that I've been appointed to the Municipal League's Economic Development and Land Use Committee. I've served on other committees there over the years, all of which have been very rewarding in having an opportunity to deal with other communities across the state in terms of the same type of issues that East Lansing has dealt with, and also to promote East Lansing in every way I possibly can. So I'm looking forward to working with them.
Professor Altman?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
Okay, I don't have anything. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, so tonight I'd like to share an announcement regarding a grant. So the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Department has been awarded a 2024-2025 out-of-school time learning grant for $695,280 through the Michigan Department of Education, and in partnership with the Michigan Department of Lifelong Education, Advancement, and Potential. Supporting our before and after school programs and summer camp programs, this grant will fund STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, curriculum development and implementation, provide additional resources for staffing, training, guest speakers, field trips, supplies, and family support and engagement events in 2025. We're grateful and very excited for the expansive learning opportunities this grant creates for our participant families, and grateful for the hard work of our school-age child care leadership staff, Julie Ann Jennings and Bethany Ross, in securing another grant to benefit our programs. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay. City Attorney report?
I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay, we move on then to the consent agenda. Mr. City Manager?
Several items on our consent agenda. The first item is 4.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. A is appoint Willem Nienhus to the Transportation Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2027. B is to appoint Corwin Harris to the Transportation Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2027. And C is to appoint Ankita Shulaka to the Transportation Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2027. 4.2 is approve a resolution recognizing the Lansing Area Parkinson Support Group as a nonprofit organization located in the City of East Lansing for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license from the Michigan Lottery Bureau. 4.3 is approve contracts with Mayant Group Architects to provide design, bidding, and construction management services for the renovation of the clerk's office and a portion of the finance offices and adjacent hallway. Authorize the city manager to sign and amend the fiscal year 2025 budget accordingly. 4.4 is approve a conditional Class 3 rental license for an occupancy of up to 2 unrelated persons or a family at 1250 Mulberry Lane. The owner is Neva Singh, East Lansing.
Okay, may we have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Meadows, seconded by Singh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. We then move on to the business agenda. Item 5.1, consideration of ordinance 1540, a request from Hagan Realty, Inc. to conditionally rezone 743, 755, and 765 Grove Street from R2 Medium Density Single Family Residential District to RM32 City Center Multiple Family Residential District for the construction of a multifamily residential building with up to 48 bedrooms and associated parking. Sir.
Landon Bartley, East Lansing's principal planner. Thanks for having me. Yes, you're correct, Mayor, that this is a conditional rezoning request to change 743, 755, 765 Grove from R2 to RM32. This would be conditioned on approval, future approval of a multiple family residential building with at least 5 units, each with 4 or fewer bedrooms. The applicant had conceptually proposed a 14-unit building with a total of 48 bedrooms, 48 residents, but that would be subject to the approval of this conditional rezoning request. So should this request be approved tonight, then the applicant would then apply for site plan approval from the Planning Commission and City Council for a building. So no building would be approved tonight, just the rezoning. I know we had a significant discussion last time, and at the Planning Commission several times. Can I answer any questions at this point from council members?
Any questions? Dr. Altman?
Could you tell me what the range of possible parking spots are there? I mean, we've heard the applicant say that they prefer to install lots of parking. And I did look in the staff report. I expect it's in there, but I wasn't able to find it.
So you're asking for the requirement for parking in the RM32 district? Or I want to make sure I understand your question.
Well, so it's a conditional rezoning, right, subject to a concept of a plan, I guess you could say, for a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And given the parameters of that proposal, how many parking spaces would we expect there? Or what would be the range?
The parking is, let me pull this up real quick. So what makes the RM32 district special is that no more than 50% of the required parking may be provided on site, although the Planning Commission and then the City Council could waive that restriction based on the needs of the applicant, the impact of traffic on the neighborhood, and the availability of public parking spaces if the property is located within 350 feet of the municipal parking system. So the applicant could request a waiver of that no more than 50% on-site requirement. As far as the required parking ratios, this would be considered a Class A unit. It sort of depends on the breakdown of units. In this district, 3/4 of a space is required per efficiency unit, 1 space per 1 bedroom, 1.5 spaces per 2 bedroom, 2.5 spaces for 3 bedrooms, 3.5 spaces per 4 bedrooms, and 1 space per bedroom above 4. So the applicant in their in their previous remarks at your public hearing, had mentioned that there would be a mix of units. I believe it was 1, 2s, and 3s. So depending on that mix, that would set the parking requirement. I believe that on their conceptual plan, they had shown 40 spaces, so that would essentially, I guess, that would sort of lead me to believe that the parking requirement with the mix of 14 units that they required, or that they propose, conceptually, would add up to 80 spaces, because then the applicant would be providing no more than 40 spaces on site. Beyond that, until I see a detailed plan with an actual number of units and their breakdown in bedrooms, I couldn't tell you the parking requirement. And again, because the site plan that's been submitted is conceptual, we haven't gone into that depth of analysis yet.
So just to recap, the conceptual plan they shows 40 spaces on site.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, that helps.
Other questions? Alden?
Yeah, I have one question.
Meadows?
And I note that when you make reference to the comprehensive plan proposals for this area, you looked at M1 and R4. And the R4, as you show anyway, has its equivalency with the RM14, which we did talk about last time. What I don't see in the report is the number of individuals who could live on this site in an RM14 designation. Do you have that calculation?
Yeah, in the RM14, the minimum lot area per unit is also sort of on a graded scale. For units that would be occupied by families, and I think I mentioned in an email to the council after last meeting, or the last regular council meeting, we are considering changing this requirement as part of what we could consider a correction. But as the code stands now, for a family occupancy, a 0 to 1 bedroom dwelling unit would require a minimum lot area of 2,500 square feet. A 2-bedroom dwelling unit would require a minimum lot area of 3,500 square feet, and that's per unit. And a 3 or more bedroom dwelling unit would require 4,000 square feet. However, for occupancy by unrelated individuals, there's a 1,000 square feet per person lot area based on the maximum number of individuals that could occupy the building. So for this particular property, I believe I think if combined, they'd be 0.87 acres. That's a total of 37,897 square feet. So in the RM14 zone district, that could allow for a maximum of 37 residents.
Okay.
Assuming that all the residents are unrelated individuals. If not, we would have to change our calculation. It's very difficult to speculate without more than a conceptual plan. And being in that this RM14 zone isn't contemplated right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, other questions? Okay, in order to move the discussion along then, I will move that we approve a conditional rezoning, approve ordinance 1540, a request from Hagan Realty, Inc. to conditionally rezone 743, 755, and 765 Grove Street from R2 medium-density single-family residential district to RM32 City Center multiple family residential district for the construction of a multi-family residential building with up to 48 bedrooms and associated parking. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Watson. Okay, discussion. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
So I'm going to be voting against this proposal, and I'll note why with respect to our zoning ordinance. So in section 50-31 of our zoning code, subsection B, we are charged with, in reviewing an ordinance for the rezoning of land, whether with or without an offer of conditions, we are charged with considering factors that include but are not limited to the following four, and I'm going to make reference to three. The first is whether the rezoning is consistent with the policies and uses proposed for that area in the city's comprehensive land use plan. And in my mind, it's not. The proposal is not consistent with that. The master plan is clear that the zoning analogous to the proposed R4, which applies to the future land use R4, which applies to one of the lots in the proposed rezoning, is either RM8 or RM14 and not RM32. So I don't see any ambiguity about that. The second criterion is whether all of the uses allowed under the proposed rezoning would be compatible with other zones and uses in the surrounding area. And again, in my mind, it would not be compatible. There is an owner-occupied neighborhood right across the street along Ridge Road that everybody forgets to talk about. And it's a small neighborhood, but it's very much a neighborhood if you've been through there canvassing. And it deserves the same consideration as our other neighborhoods given the low owner occupancy rate in East Lansing, which is under 40% as of the last census, which is a number we've become familiar with over the past 2 months. And then the third paragraph is, third subsection is whether any public services and facilities would be significantly adversely impacted by development or use allowed under the requested rezoning. And the public service in this case is stormwater management, and the facility is the sewer system. This location is uphill from areas that are flood prone. There is a condo association just to the west in the same block that has had flooding issues. And I think we have materials from them in our packet this week. There's the Abbott and Bircham intersection, which last July flooded to the point that we had to cancel the city council meeting because cars couldn't get to the building and drivers had to abandon their cars. And then there's Grove Street south of Bircham. And we've heard from owners there and we've seen the videos. So this is not an abstract issue, this is a real issue. I don't see how you put 40 spaces on 3 lots without basically paving the whole available space there. And for reference, the City Hall North parking lot, which is probably a touchstone for a lot of people, is 50 spaces. So this would not be much smaller than that. And the problem is compounded because this area ties into the combined sewer lines. It's part of the combined sewer area. And any proposed use here that requires RM32 would add sanitary load. Maybe in future years we will have mitigated the flooding issues in this area and other areas, but we have a problem there now. So those are my reasons for voting no.
Okay, other discussion? Go ahead, please.
Just, I thought it was really helpful that we had the public comment last week or 2 weeks ago, because it helped me to understand like what my focus is today, and maybe helpful tips for the applicant going forward about what the community or neighborhood concerns are. But again, in centering why we're here today and what decision we're making today, and under my understanding that there will be plans coming forward and there will be opportunities to talk about some of the things that have come up, and there will be time to go down the rabbit hole. But as of today, as far as I'm concerned, the applicant meets what it is that they're asking for to move forward in this way, so I'm gonna be voting yes in support.
Keller, other comments? I'm going to be voting for this for at least 5 reasons. First of all, I just don't receive any kind of signal from Michigan State University that the institution is going to do anything to accommodate housing for students. I am begrudgingly coming to the opinion that the city, unfortunately, is going to have to accommodate that housing. And if I thought that MSU was going to use any of its existing vast amounts of land to build dormitories, I might have a different opinion on this development. But I don't see any signal that that's going to happen. And as a matter of fact, the president at the MLK luncheon yesterday gave, who I respect a lot, he's doing a wonderful job, but indicated to the assembled crowd that in fact, I think they've increased, or they anticipate an increase in acceptances this year over and above the significant increase they had last year. So that's number one. Number two, I've been around a long time too, and I understand some of the arguments about those people who live in the 600 block. And they're entitled to their own opinions as to what the effect's going to be or not going to be. But unfortunately, in this particular situation, I think that horse left the barn some years ago. As a citizen, and I'm not making a critique of anything that happened before, but I guess I was kind of astonished to see the fraternity and sorority go in on what I termed to be the 700 block of Grove Street. And so I think, frankly, Bircham has become a demarcation line in terms of what we will call single-family housing. And of course, in the 600 block, there are rental houses in the 600 block as well, is my understanding. But so I understand the argument, but I just think that things and circumstances have moved on, and this block is a unique block. It's already what I would call a mixed block in terms of the types of housing. I readily acknowledge the Ridge Road situation. I walked through there to high school for years, and I do agree with Dr. Altman that that's a very specific, unique block. And as this moves forward, if it does move forward, I'm going to be very, very persnickety about what the plans are in terms of this unit to the extent it affects other units. The third thing is this is a conditional rezoning. So it occurs to me that, with all due respect to Dr. Altman, I don't see this the way he does in terms of the criteria, and I think that we have a vast amount of control over this as it goes forward. And having said that, and again, not knowing how the vote's going to go, I'm just going to say this to the proponents of this, which is, I, for one, am going to be very, very, very critical about how this is developed, and I think Dr. Altman has, and others have referred to the water issues, and I think the applicants actually has acknowledged that they've got to deal with those water issues. So there's going to be a lot of hoops going through this conditional rezoning if in fact it passes tonight. And then finally, and maybe I already said this, but I just think that there's already rental licenses on this block. It's a question of what kind of rental units are going to be there or not be there. I think the single family use of these houses has gone into the past like the entire, or almost the entire Bailey neighborhood, which started in the early 70s. And so this is the trend. I'm not happy with it. I have some confidence in the Hagans being able to do this with some class and criteria, and I think we're going to have a lot of control over this. And so those are the reasons why I'm going to vote in favor of this conditional rezoning request via this particular ordinance. Any other comments tonight? Yes, sir, Mr. Meadows.
Let me say first that, I am not opposed to the idea of rezoning on this block. I think I've made it clear from my first comments anyway, and I do appreciate the concept plan that was put in. I think as a result of some comments I made, that I felt permitted me to ship this on to the Planning Commission so we could get it to this point at least. But as I indicated at the first time we talked about this, I want rezonings to be associated with actual approval of a site plan. And that's one reason I won't be voting for this tonight. But in addition to that, I'm not convinced that RM32 is the right zone for this particular location, and that's with full knowledge that we have other RM32 in that vicinity already. I still, and the reason I've been asking the question about RM14 is I believe it accomplishes a lot of what the Hagans are proposing here, but reduces the density in that area and is likely to do so. So I'm also aware that the Planning Commission is rapidly moving with regard to subcommittees into the Green Code study, a comprehensive plan update, a stormwater management review. Among the things that have been indicated with regard to RM through 32 is that it's required, when we evaluate that we're required to determine whether the change is in the best interest of the city. Not just advantageous to the property owners, because I believe it will be, but in the best interest of the city. And at this point in time, I don't think approval of this particular project or this request for a zoning change, even though conditional, would be in the best interest of the city. As I've said, I appreciate the concept plan, and I really hope it kind of looks that way. But I'm willing to revisit this when I have a plan in front of me that will be built upon and that we can approve, and that we can do the things that the mayor just referred to, which is look at the special use permit and make those changes to ensure that the 600 block won't be adversely affected by any development up there. But I'm not opposed to redevelopment, and I'm definitely not opposed to rezoning this particular property. I'd like to get us to the point where we have an RM4 and we have an M1, and I'm hoping that the Planning Commission will be moving expeditiously to try to get us there.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Altman?
No.
Councilmember Meadows?
No.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
Yes.
Mayor Brookover?
Yes, motion passes 3-2. Okay, moving ahead to item 5.2, consideration of a special use request from Gunavid LLC to construct a fabrication shop at 16647 Chandler Road, which will produce piping products and plumbing supplies for commercial and residential projects. Fabrication uses require special use approval by the Planning Commission and City Council in the OIP Office Industrial Park Zone District. Sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you mentioned, this is a request for a special use approval for fabrication use at 16679 Chandler Road. This is contingent upon the rezoning request for the parcel immediately north and west of the main parent parcel here at this address, which would be, if rezoned, combined. So it is contingent upon that rezoning request being passed tonight. But the special use request is for a fabrication shop or manufacturing use. As you mentioned at the last meeting, there had been a question about what is being fabricated, and that is for commercial and residential plumbing and piping products. I did want to mention that because fabrication or manufacturing is the land use, that a future tenant could potentially move into this property and manufacture something else. But for now, the request is to manufacture piping and plumbing products. There had also been a question about the setback to the residential uses immediately to the south. The proposed fabrication shop has a setback proposed from the south property line of 33 feet, and the closest apartment building has a setback of about 22 feet. So we're looking at approximately 50 feet, 55 feet between the buildings at the closest point. I know there had been a question about that. There had also been a question about the gravel area to the north and east of the fabrication shop as proposed. That would be 1.5 acres combined of gravel laydown area for equipment and supplies in that area. So that had been a question as well. Beyond that, can I answer any questions from council members?
Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I have, given the sort of relative proximity of the residential to the south, I mean, 55 feet ain't nothing, but still, do we have any sense of what the main generators of noise on this site would be? Is noise going to leak out of the fabrication shop, traffic, what sort of hours are we talking about for deliveries and that sort of thing?
Generally, a land use such as this, would the main generators of noise be the actual manufacturing use inside. The entire use would be required to remain inside with doors closed to help mitigate noise effects. You'd also have some impacts from industrial vehicles moving items around, especially in the lay-down area. To mitigate that, you could certainly require some sort of a privacy fence as a buffer, or landscaping, or both between the two. Beyond that, generally we don't have hours requirements for this use, and the applicant hasn't proposed any. But certainly no operations could take place outside as far as the industrial operation goes.
In terms of notice, would all the residential, how much of the residential area to the south would have received notice, and would notice have gone to the owners as well as the tenants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our notice goes out to owners and occupants within 350 feet.
So at least some people there would have received the notice and had the opportunity to comment?
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Do we have a motion? I therefore move that we approve a special use request from Gunnavid LLC to construct a fabrication shop at 16647 Chandler Road, which will produce piping products and plumbing supplies for commercial and residential projects. Fabrication uses require special use approval by the Planning Commission and City Council in the OIP Office Industrial Park Zone District. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Do you want to include the conditions?
Yes, thank you. Can you state those? Do you have those right in front
Yeah,
of you?
I've got them right in front of me. The following conditions, this would be a friendly amendment, that the following conditions of approval shall apply. This approval shall be contingent upon approval of ordinance 1539, a rezoning request by the applicant in combination of the rezoned parcel with 16647 Chandler Road. If the rezoning is not approved, this approval shall be invalidated. 2, approval is in accordance with the plans provided by the applicant and per testimony, subject to revisions as required. 3, all required permits shall be obtained from the Department of Planning, Building, and Development for all interior renovations, as well as for exterior signs in accordance with Chapter 32, Signs of the City Code. 4, all required permits shall be obtained from the Department of Public Works for any proposed or required site changes, including utility connections, land clearing or tree removal, grading, and stormwater management. 5, the minimum parking requirement of 53 parking spaces is found to exceed the practical parking needs of the proposed use and is reduced to 24 in accordance with Section 50-812(5) of the zoning ordinance. 6, the project shall be designed and developed in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations. 7, this approval shall take effect upon the filing of an executed memorandum of special use permit with the Clinton County Register of Deeds per Section 50-96 of the City Code, or upon the date of effect of Ordinance 1539, whichever is later. 8, that at least one level 2 or better EV charging station shall be installed within the parking lot for a space in proximity to the front door. Those are the conditions.
And that friendly amendment is accepted and therefore becomes part of the main motion. So, yes, sir, Mr. Altman.
I have a motion.
Sure.
Which is to add a 9th condition to read as follows: that any trees not accepted from the tree removal permit requirements outlined in Chapter 48, Division 3 of the City Code of Ordinances, tree removal and land clearing, shall be replaced at a rate of 2 new 3-inch trees for each 6 inches of tree diameter or fraction thereof, which is cut down.
Okay, is there a second?
That could be a friendly amendment, I guess, but I'll second it.
Yeah, I'm not accepting it as a friendly amendment, so, okay. So discussion on the amendment, you kind of lost me there at the start.
All right, let me read it
So,
again.
well, no, I understood the reading, but, so, in effect, what you're doing is, they're already going to be subject to the, what I'm going to loosely call the tree ordinance, correct? They're already subject to that. And so what you're doing is, you're going beyond the tree ordinance to require replacement of 2 trees for each tree removed?
Replacement at a rate of 2 new 3-inch trees for each 6 inches of tree diameter or fraction thereof that is cut down. And the principal planner can address where that language came from.
Can you?
I'm sorry, I was writing on the condition you asked for. To explain? So I have the amendment as requiring a tree replacement at a rate of 2 new 3-inch trees for each 6 inches or fraction thereof which is cut down. So that generally reflects the tree removal requirements of the ordinance, which I'm pulling up right now. Replacement of, so section 48-98 sub 1 is replacement of illegally removed trees and shrubs may be required as restoration in lieu of the additional money damages, which are typically levied for illegal tree removal. This replacement shall be accomplished by the replanting of removed trees at the rate of 2 new 3-inch trees for 6 inches of tree diameter or fraction thereof, which is cut down, and 1 new 3-inch tree for each 200 square feet of the clear-cut area. So Councilmember Altman's motion would add a condition that would generally match the requirement for replacement of trees that have been illegally removed, but not including the trees that would have to be replaced, that would have to be planted to replace clear-cut land, and not including punitive fees. So it is consistent with the tree replacement requirements.
Is that what you wanted to do?
Yes, and I'm not claiming that trees are going to be removed illegally.
No, I understand that, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, wouldn't it just be simpler to include the condition that says that the applicant will comply with all requirements of the ordinance, which was just cited, except that the applicant will be required to replace trees rather than to pay damages? I mean, you want to replace trees, right?
I want to replace trees, but my understanding of the ordinance is that damages are only required if trees are removed illegally.
Yeah, I think there's a question under the ordinance as to what's legal or illegal, having been there myself in the last 8 weeks. So.
That I can't address.
So, right, your motion's in front of us. So any discussion on that motion?
Just a question for Landon. So is what we're accomplishing in this condition already covered in the ordinance?
No.
Okay.
If the Planning Commission, thereby the City Council, approves a site plan as shown with the removal of trees, and there, essentially, if you approve a site plan that results from the removal of trees, there would be no replacement required.
Okay.
If the trees are illegally removed without a permit, at that point, they'd be required to be replaced at that ratio, as Councilmember Altman stated, plus punitive damages.
Okay, but this is still subject to a site plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the site plan is what's being proposed tonight with a special use.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion on the amendment to the main motion?
Could I just address my motion
Sure.
briefly?
Sure.
So we have been accustomed to treating trees like we treat weeds, okay, for purposes of development. And that's led to a lot of problems, and I think we have to take a different direction. The vegetation ordinance, chapter 48, is actually pretty eloquent in terms of stating the benefits of trees, but to try to put it succinctly, they are a carbon sink, they are a water sink, they are a habitat, and they are an amenity. And I think we need to do better in terms of requiring development projects to either preserve trees or replace the trees that they take out. And I think this is something to think about in the Green Code review, but this is a measure that we can apply now to this particular project. As part of the site visit, when I went up to see the location, there's a lot of big trees on that property that are going to go away. And I think that's a problem. And that's the genesis of my motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. 4 in favor and 1 against the amendment. Watson against. All right, we now move to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion with regard to the main motion, which now adds those conditions plus the condition added by the amendment? Is that correct, Dr. Ullman? Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions about that? Go ahead.
I have a question. I am a little bit on the fence about this project, given the proximity of given the fact that it's a manufacturing project that is quite close to residential. And if other people had thoughts about that, I would be interested in hearing them.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's do a roll call vote, please.
No.
Councilmember Meadows.
Yes.
Councilmember Watson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh.
Yes.
Mayor Brookover.
Yes. Okay, passes by a vote of 4 to 1, Altman in opposition. Moving on to item 5.3, consideration of ordinance 1542 to amend Chapter 20 of the City Code for items related to historic preservation, including the staff issuance policy. We had this in front of us last meeting. Are you speaking to this?
I am.
Okay.
You have me for 328 pages of your packet and 4 items. So these are changes to the historic preservation ordinance. As the council liaison to the Historic District Commission, Mayor Brookover spoke last time about these have been in the works since early 2023, but for various reasons have been delayed until now. Essentially, there are relatively minor changes proposed, removing language to referring to the design assistance team, removing requirements for owner disclosures, clarifying commission's review authority, adding clarifying terms, typographical corrections. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve ordinance 1542 to amend Chapter 20 of the City Code for items related to historic preservation, including the staff issuance policy.
Moved by Meadows. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Altman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Which now brings us to item 5.4, consideration of ordinance 1539, a request from Gunavid LLC to rezone a vacant parcel immediately adjacent to and to be combined with 16647 Chandler Road from D** Bath Township Development to OIP Office Industrial Park to facilitate the construction of a fabrication shop, a special use within the OIP zone district. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. And I realize I misspoke for the special use request. I said 16679. The request, the address is indeed 16647 Chandler Road. So this parcel is 16647 Chandler. At one point was a 10-acre rectangular parcel. At one point, the northwest, almost 2 acres was separated from that parcel. That separated 1.837 acre parcel is currently zoned, bless you, it's currently zoned Bath Township Development, which was its zoning upon a 425 transfer from Bath Township to East Lansing. The remainder of the parcel, the larger parcel, 16647 Chandler, is currently zoned OIP. office industrial park. So the applicant is requesting to change the zoning of the remainder parcel to OIP from Bath Township Development to match the designation of the larger parcel, combine the two, and then construct their fabrication shop, which this council just approved. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just want a confirmation. In looking at the map on this, immediately to the south of this particular parcel and part of the prior parcel appears to be a location, and I just want to confirm this. This was the location which Diane Holman and her husband operated a manufacturing operation previously.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the rezoning request from Gunnevet LLC to amend the zoning use district map of Chapter 50 zoning of the Code of the Ordinances to rezone a 1.8 acre parcel, PN 19-20-10-31-300-015, close paren, immediately adjacent to and to be combined with the 8.2 acre parcel at 16647 Chandler Road, parentheses, PN 19-20-10-31-300-020, close paren, from Bath Township D Star Development zoning to East Lansing OIP Office Industrial Park for the following reasons. One, the rezoning is consistent with the policies and uses proposed for that area in the city's comprehensive land use plan. Two, the uses allowed under the proposed OIP, Office Industrial Park Zone District, would be compatible with other zones and uses in the surrounding area. Three, public services and facilities would not be significantly adversely impacted by a development or use allowed under the requested rezoning. And four, the uses proposed by the proposed rezoning would be equally or better suited to the area than uses allowed under the current zoning of the land.
I second the motion. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That then moves us to item 5.5, consideration of approval of a resolution to authorize, thank you, sir. All 300 pages were well worth it and entirely entertaining. Consideration of approval of a resolution to authorize the contract between the Michigan Department of Transportation and the City of East Lansing for fiscal year 2025 state earmark funds in the amount of $2,400,000. Authorize the city manager and amend the fiscal year 25 budget accordingly. Mr. Belleman.
So this is the contract to, in essence, approve the $2.4 million appropriations that our local legislators, Senator Singh, Representative Brixey, and Representative Tsernoglou was able to put in the fiscal year 25 state budget that would cover the cost of a traffic signal intersection improvements on Trowbridge Road, non-motorized and emergency egress path from the Red Cedar neighborhood, and to install a screening wall in partnership with the city and MSU for those dollars.
Questions? Yes, sir.
I have a motion.
Go ahead, please.
I'll move approval of a resolution to authorize the contract between the Michigan Department of Transportation and the City of East Lansing for fiscal year 2025 state earmark funds in the amount of $2,400,000. Authorize the city manager to sign and amend the fiscal year 2025 budget accordingly.
Do we have a second? Second from Singh?
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. All right, do we have a motion with regard to a closed session?
So moved.
Well, let's state it for the record,
Okay.
please.
I'll move that we enter into a closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268, paren 1, paren lowercase h, to discuss an attorney-client privileged memorandum that is exempt from disclosure pursuant to MCL 15.243, paren 1, paren lowercase g.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows.
Yes.
Councilmember Watson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh.
Yes.
Mayor Brookover.
Yes. Okay, we'll reconvene for the closed session and then come back. You all set? Okay, could we have a motion to come back into open session, please?
I move we enter open session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed. All right, any further motions tonight?
I have a motion, Mayor.
Please?
I move to direct the city attorney to file a lawsuit to challenge the validity of Proposition 1 due to its lack of clarity and violation of state law, using any and all causes of action he sees fit.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
So moved by Altman, seconded by Meadows. Discussion.
I'd like to address my motion.
Sure.
So I want to address two issues with Proposal 1. It has lots of issues, but I want to focus on two of them. The first arises from the structure of the proposal. The Home Rule City Act at 117.21 sub 3 reads in relevant part, if the subject of a charter amendment includes more than one related proposition, each proposition shall be separately stated to afford an opportunity for an elector to vote for or against each proposition, end quote. Proposal 1 allowed one opportunity to vote, but it had 7 paragraphs, which I consider 7 propositions. Only 6 of those paragraphs were identified in the ballot language, which is a separate issue. Putting that issue aside, the result is that we don't know the will of the people with respect to each individual proposition. Any single one may or may not have passed on its own had the proposal followed the law. And this matters. Suppose someone wants to pass something unpopular and pairs it with something they see as popular in order to get it across the line. This provision of HRCA means that voters have a right to vote on the unpopular provision on its own. It is a voting rights issue, and when voting rights issues occur, we go to bat for the voters. And the clerk's office and their work on campus in the early voting center is a recent example of that. We don't let voters fend for themselves. We stand up for them. The second issue, which is a time bomb, is the ambiguity in paragraph 1 of the amendment. Other people have dissected this at length, in particular Councilmember Meadows. My understanding is that there is a reading of paragraph 1 that would overturn many of our rental regulations, including but not limited to rental restriction overlays and occupancy limits. I know people who read Prop 1 that way and supported it on that basis in hopes of increasing the amount of rental housing in East Lansing, which is a perfectly legitimate policy position to take. What supporters or opponents of Proposal 1 think about this paragraph doesn't matter. What matters is how the courts ultimately interpret it. At some point, some investor is going to figure out that there is a lot of money to be made if you can overturn rental restriction overlays and occupancy limits in this Big Ten college town of ours. This is not a hypothetical. We heard earlier tonight about all the anticipated demand for student housing as MSU's enrollment continues to increase and MSU's likely unwillingness to build dorms on their property. There's also a letter in our communications tonight that I want to read from briefly, and it reads as follows. Since the fall, we have received, the writer writes, we have received 2 unsolicited offers to buy our house. These offers were not from realtors, but from property development companies. Both companies were from out of the area. One was from out of state. In the 31 years we've lived in Glencairn, we've never once received an offer of any kind on our house. We wonder whether it's less about the house and more about the half-mile walk to Breslin, Munn, and Spartan Stadium. End quote. I would guess that millions, if not tens of millions of dollars are at stake for the price of a lawsuit. So it's going to happen at some point. We could see a lawsuit today. We could see one 10 years from now. We don't know what the courts will decide. We do know that this is now the uncertainty that we are living under. And uncertainty is not good for planning or making decisions. It serves no one to be living under this cloud. If we take this proposed action tonight and the courts ultimately tell us it's up to us to figure out what paragraph 1 means, great. If the courts tell us that our rental restrictions are gone, that's not great, but then at least we can plan. Charter provisions can be repealed or retained if we can agree on what they mean. And right now, there is no agreement on what paragraph means. Paragraph 1 means. From the start of this process, I have said that it is the city's responsibility to help its residents understand the code, okay, especially for something as basic as how you can use your home, right? Property rights issues. That obligation has not changed. The means have changed. Okay? Before, we could just say, here's what the code says, right? And we tried that. We tried that pretty hard. But now we have to ask somebody else what our code means. We have to ask the courts. And I think we have to do that. And so I see this as the next step in a legislative process. Okay, no more and no less. It's not a process we chose, but it's one that's before us. And it's one we are not going to be able to run away from. Thank you.
Okay, any other further discussion?
I have.
Mr. Meadows?
Let me just say that, I generally agree with what Councilmember Altman just said in terms of his rationale for supporting this motion. But I have my own reason for doing this. And I will also say that I think we have an obligation to do this. I think we have an obligation to get it right. I don't think that's an attack on Proposal 1 necessarily, or the things contained there. If you basically look at the arguments that have been presented in its favor, clarification of the guest definitions is a good thing. And we're in the process of accomplishing that. When we look at the way that individual members of our community can obtain information from the city regarding rental housing or anything else, it's good for us to highlight that. Any kind of regulations that we propose. And as far as the other various provisions of the Proposal 1 I think that we have, to the extent that we understand it, have incorporated those into the rental regulations amendment that is at the Housing Commission now and will be returned to us relatively soon. But I do think there's a major defect in this proposal that we have an obligation to our community to address. And that relates back, as much as I think paragraph number 1 is ambiguous, I think there is a non-ambiguity with regard to paragraph 4, which clearly states, to enforce zoning, occupancy, or rental housing laws, the city must first notify owners and occupants of the violation by issuing an order and allowing at least 7 days to comply with the law. As I indicated a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about a zoning change relating to the family definition, and which I think was mentioned by one of the speakers here tonight, we also discovered that there were other provisions in the zoning code which required a change as well. and have requested the city attorney to prepare that ordinance. So with regard to zoning in particular, and clearly this proposal addressed and required a change to our zoning ordinance. The question is whether the Zoning Enabling Act prohibits any change to zoning ordinances adopted by a governmental entity through an initiative petition. And Proposal 1 was the result of an initiative petition. Many of the cases that support the proposition that you cannot do it that way have been in effect prior to the replacement of the original Zoning Enabling Act in 2006. The current ZEA is set out at MCL 125.3101 et sec. The current version of the ZEA continues the language that prohibits any change to zoning ordinances by any method other than enactment by a local legislative body. The current provision, set out at MCL 125.3202 paren 1 states, quote, amendments or supplements to the zoning ordinance shall be adopted in the same manner as provided under this act for the adoption of the original ordinance, unquote. In other words, amendments to our zoning ordinances cannot be made or proposed by an initiative petition and or a vote of the people unless specifically provided for in state statutes. The only method provided by a state statute for adoption or amendment of a zoning ordinance is by a local legislative body. Like our own charter, many charters in Michigan provide for initiative and referendum. These provisions provide for the ability of the general public to initiate legislation that would enact or amend an ordinance or a charter through vote of the residents of a governmental unit, or in the case of referendum, to prevent the enactment of an ordinance. In Michigan, initiative and referendums are permissive provisions of a charter, as set forth in MCL 117.4G. The recent vote on ranked choice voting in East Lansing is an example of an initiative amendment to our charter. Of course, because it's specifically referenced that it was operative only when permitted by the state, its provisions have not taken effect. The Michigan Supreme Court has indicated in subsequent cases have followed a particular rationale for the proposition that a zoning provision can only be altered or enacted by a local legislative body. In Koresh v. Livonia, a 1972 case, the court pointed out that the process of amending a zoning ordinance is specifically spelled out in the ZEA, and initiative is not part of that process. The court then stated, as a consequence, quote, as a consequence, the Home Rule Act provision for zoning must be read in conjunction with the Zoning Enabling Act. When so read, the question is whether the exercise of the charter authorized the right to initiative is compatible with the city authority to zone. The answer provided by the court is that it is not, particularly where a city has set up a zoning authority, which in this case is the Planning Commission. The court went on to state at page 745, quote, therefore the amendment to the ordinance, having been enacted by a procedure different from and contrary to the procedure required by the Zoning Enabling Act, is invalid, unquote. Notably, the Home Rule City Act sets out at MCL 117.36, quote, no provision of a city charter shall conflict with or contravene the provisions of any general law of the state. The Home Rule City Act also limits initiative and referendum. MCL 117.4IG provides for the permissible inclusion of a charter of initiative and referendum as follows, quote, the initiative and referendum on all matters within the scope of the powers of that city. It is not within the powers of this city to allow a zoning change through an initiative petition and change to a city charter. And for those reasons, and for others, I am in support of this motion so that we can go forward as a city with the appropriate changes we have, I think, already identified in the consolidation of our rental code into the rental regulations that are pending before the Housing Commission, and which the city council appropriately would change going forward.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Swanson? Go ahead.
Where's the camera at? Where do I look? No one's ever told me.
I think it's right there.
The green one right there?
I think so.
Okay. Am I square on? Am I square on? No.
You're on
It doesn't look like it. I see
Just
myself
look
on
up
the
there.
screen.
Look up there.
Yeah, but where can I look like I'm looking into the TV? Okay, all right. All right. I am ashamed to be affiliated with a council that took their seats through the same mechanism that passed this proposal without argument. People sat down and they were elected by the people. And then something went into the people's hands because this council didn't act and didn't make any changes. And then I feel like council members have abused their power, which is their access to a city attorney, because they didn't agree with the process. I am relieved that I can finally look at my constituents and say, these were being discussed, and you all were right in being suspicious. It was troubling for me to have these conversations behind closed doors. It's troubling that this is even a matter of a vote right now. I have been ready to follow what the people said, and I am ashamed to be sitting alongside people that would use the same system that sat them in these seats to make decisions and go this route. So I will 100% be voting no on this, and I just, I can't believe that we're here today. But finally, I'm relieved that we can move the discussion forward and move the feelings forward, and I'm disappointed that we get to possibly continue the arguments about why we should or shouldn't when the proposal passed. And I saw that as we need to make some changes that the people have asked for by majority. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Ms. Singh?
Sure. So I will not be supporting the motion as offered by Dr. Altman. I did not support the adoption of Proposal 1. Last year, I believe in January, if not February, the communication clarification that our city employees undertook, as well as the policy work within 6 months of January, so mid-year, that I have to compliment Mr. Meadows as well as Dr. Altman in putting some work in with the Housing Commission to help clarify and meet some of the community questions needs. Now, the people moved forward with signature collection. The Attorney General reviewed the language that was applied and put on the ballot, and it passed. Now, in my own review, I think there is ambiguity that needs to be clarified, but I also know there's probably avenues for others to challenge this proposal for clarification. I would also point out that, both sides of this proposal, residents called foul for how the language and how people were addressed and the discussion around the issue. Even said our own city staff and city government was incorrect in terms of how we were applying the rule of law. If you can't fact check, what do you have? Now, here we are, and I just, the people have voted. I think there is questions. I think there, is clarification needed, but do not plan on supporting the motion as offered tonight.
Okay, I will reluctantly be voting against this motion for the following reasons. First, although I believe the ballot proposition was seriously flawed, it was approved by a majority of the voters. Second, the council had already begun a review and reorganization of the various ordinances impacting our rental housing. That process will continue and will hopefully result in a clarification of those ordinances while still complying with the apparent intent of the ballot proposal. Third, to the extent the recent proposition is flawed, those flaws can be repaired by the council via a council-initiated charter amendment process at the appropriate time in the future. Fourth, for various reasons which I need not enunciate here, the city has recently endured a period of discord. I am simply not interested in perpetuating that discord through litigation when we face other significant pending issues which require us to work together. Having said all that, let me add this. To the extent there are those in the community who feel that this charter change was legally flawed and does not somehow significantly alter the rights and options of permanent residents, I invite you to seek legal redress and ask a court to clarify the propriety of this charter change. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Altman?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh?
No.
Mayor Brookover?
No. Okay, could we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Mayor, I have another motion.
Sure.
I move to direct the city attorney to draft and publish a comprehensive opinion addressing the lack of clarity and state law violations of Proposal 1.
I'll second that. Okay. You want to explain?
Yeah, if I could address my motion. If we're going to dump this on the citizens, okay, if we're going to leave it to the people of the city to defend their own voting rights, I think the least we could do is give them a roadmap. And there are lots of problems with this proposal, as has been apparent from the beginning. And let's do what we can to help our citizens act on their own now that we've tasked them with doing that.
Okay, was it seconded?
I seconded it.
Okay, moved by Altman, seconded by Meadows.
Okay,
Further
can I
dis-
make a comment?
Sure, sure.
Thanks. This will be very brief. I do think that this would be consistent with, I think, the concerns that have been expressed by Councilmember Watson about how we've been talking about this out of sight of the public, and I think the public has a right to know at this point in time, for the reasons stated by Councilmember Altman, as to why the city attorney has been communicating with us with regard to this, and it would take a motion like this for that to actually occur. So.
Okay, I'm going to vote against the motion for a couple different reasons. First of all, as is fully set forth in the record, we've asked for and received confidential advice from the city attorney with regard to this issue. Second, if in fact there was a litigation involving this matter, I think it's entirely possible that one of the defendants or a defendant would be the city, which would have to be defended by the city attorney. I am not interested in the city attorney somehow publicly issuing a, quote, roadmap end quote, so that a group can decide if they want to sue the city or not. The record is replete from both sides about all the pros and cons and all the things that may or may not have been done correctly or incorrectly with regard to this process. So I am going to vote against the motion for that reason. I think there's adequate legal talent in this city if somebody wants to pursue some sort of litigation concerning this matter. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
I have a question for the city attorney, and that is whether publishing such an opinion could compromise the city's position in future litigation.
That's quite speculative, so, it's kind of a broad question. To the extent that we were in a circumstance where the city became a defendant, I would not want the memorandum to be public.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's have a roll call vote on this one, please.
No.
Councilmember Meadows,
No, based on the city attorney's response.
Councilmember Watson,
I'm confused. I'm sorry.
Mr. Altman just voted against his own motion.
Thank you. Okay, no. Thank you.
And your vote is?
No.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Singh,
No.
Mayor Brookover.
No. All right, could we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Dr. Altman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Meadows. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.